On the evening of April 28, 2017, CCTV cameras captured a young woman walking through the lobby of a hotel in Johannesburg, South Africa. She looked relaxed, comfortable. Beside her was a man she trusted. Nothing about the footage seemed unusual. No one watching those cameras could have known that they were witnessing the final hours of 22-year-old Karabo, Moekoena. What happened after she disappeared would shock an entire nation and turn one man into one of South Africa's most hated killers. This is the story of Karabo Moekoena.
Hi guys, I'm Karabo Moekoena, and I just want to share a few of my thoughts on beauty.
Karabo Moekoena was young, ambitious, and full of life.
You can give us your problem from A to people just want to know the solution. Yo, you went through this, and therefore, how did you come out of it?
Friends described her as kind, intelligent, and driven. She loved fashion, enjoyed spending time with friends, and had a bright future ahead of her. Like many young people her age, Karabo was active on social media, and it was through social media that she met a man named Sandile Manso. At first glance, Sandile appeared to be the complete package. He was charming, confident, and seemed to have a promising future ahead of him. On social media, he portrayed himself as a successful entrepreneur and cryptocurrency investor. His pages showcased a lifestyle many young people admired. He spoke about business ventures, investments, and financial success. To friends and followers, Sandile appeared ambitious and driven, the kind of man who was building something for himself, the kind of man who seemed to know exactly where he was headed in life. But appearance can be deceiving. As investigators and journalists would later discover, the image Sandile projected online did not always match reality. Behind the carefully curated social media posts were reports of financial struggles and personal problems. Several people who knew him described him as someone who was deeply concerned with how others perceived him. And for a time, it worked, including on Karabo. The two quickly grew closer and began a romantic relationship, and to outsiders, they appeared happy together. Photos showed smiling faces, and social media painted the picture of a young couple in love. But behind closed doors, the relationship was becoming increasingly turbulent. Friends later revealed that the couple argued frequently. There were allegations of jealousy, possessive behavior, and growing tension between the two. Like many toxic relationships, the warning signs appeared gradually. Small disagreements became larger conflicts, and moments of control were dismissed as concern. Arguments were followed by apologies, and before long, the relationship had become far more complicated than it appeared online. Well, unfortunately, nobody could imagine just how tragic it would all end. By late April 2017, the relationship between Karabo and Sandile had become increasingly strained. Friends would later tell investigators that the couple had experienced periods of conflict and reconciliation. Like many young couples, they broke up and got back together more than once, but no one around them could have predicted that the relationship was approaching a really deadly conclusion. On April 28, 2017, Karabo was seen spending time with Sandile. The pair were pictured on CCTV entering a hotel in Johannesburg. The footage would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. To anyone watching, they appeared ordinary. There were no visible sign of fear and no indication that anything was wrong. No clue that this would be the last time Karabo would ever be seen alive. According to evidence later presented in court, the couple spent time together inside the hotel. What happened behind closed doors remains known only to the two people who were there. But prosecutors argued that an argument eventually broke out, and sometime during that night, Karabo was killed. The following morning, friends and family began noticing something unusual. Karabo was not responding to calls, messages remained unanswered, and hours turned into a whole day, and then another. And then the silence became impossible to ignore. Family members knew something was wrong. Karabo was close to those she loved. She was not the type of person to disappear without contacting anyone. As concern grew, her family reported her missing, and almost immediately, social media became flooded with appeals for information. Friends shared photographs, strangers posted missing person flyers. The hashtag carrying Karabo's name spread rapidly across South Africa. Thousands of people joined the search. Many believed that she had been kidnapped, and others hoped that she would be found safely. Meanwhile, investigators began retracing her final known movements. Every phone call, every message, every CCTV camera, every witness. And piece by piece, detectives built a timeline. Again and again, the investigation led back to one person, Sandile Manso. As police questioned him, they encountered inconsistencies. Certain details changed. Some explanations failed to match the evidence investigators were collecting. The more detectives looked into his story, the more questions they had. And then, only days after Karabo disappeared, the case took a horrifying turn. On May 1st, 2017, residents in Lindhout, Johannesburg, noticed something unusual in an open field. What investigators found would shock the nation. A badly burned human body. The remains had been severely damaged by fire. Detectives immediately secured the scene. Forensic experts began the difficult process of identifying the victim, and days later, the heartbreaking confirmation arrived. The body belonged to Karabo Moekoena. The news devastated her family. Across South Africa, hope instantly turned into grief. People who had been praying for a safe return now found themselves mourning a young woman whose life had been cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. But the discovery of her body only intensified demands for answers. Who had killed Karabo and why? As forensic investigators examined the evidence, attention continued to focus on Sandile. Police analyzed phone records, they examined witness statements, they reviewed CCTV footage, and they reconstructed movements and timelines. The evidence began pointing in one direction. Eventually, police moved in. Sandile Manso was arrested and charged, and the arrest dominated national headlines. Television stations covered every development, and newspapers ran front page stories. Social media erupted with anger. Many South Africans saw Karabo's case as part of a much larger problem. Her murder reignited conversations about violence against women and intimate partner abuse. For many people, Karabo had become more than a victim. She had become a symbol. A symbol of countless women whose fears, concerns, and warning signs had been overlooked. The trial of Sandile was national news. And then the trial took an unexpected turn. For months, South Africans had been asking the same question. What exactly happened to Karabo Moekoena on the night she disappeared? Inside the courtroom, the public finally began hearing Sandile's version of events. According to the statements presented during the case, Sandile claimed that after an argument with Karabo, he left her alone for a period of time, and when he returned, he allegedly found her dead. But the prosecutors immediately attacked that explanation. If Karabo had simply died unexpectedly, why didn't he call the police? Why didn't he call an ambulance? And why didn't he contact a family? Instead, the court had allegations that Sandile's next actions focused on hiding what had happened. Prosecutors told the court that rather than reporting Karabo's death, Sandile disposed of her body. The court had evidence that her body was placed in a container and transported in a vehicle and later taken to an isolated area where attempts were made to destroy evidence, and her body was burnt down to a crisp. And then came perhaps the most disturbing claim of all. The court heard testimony regarding statements allegedly made by Sandile in which he linked Karabo's death to a ritual connected to gaining power or success for his forex trading activities. The claim shocked the courtroom and dominated media coverage across South Africa. Prosecutors argued that these explanations made little sense and were simply attempts to avoid responsibility. The state pointed to the physical evidence. The CCTV footage, the timeline, the forensic findings, and the fact that Sandali was the last known person seen with Karabo alive. To the prosecution, the changing explanations told the story of a man trying desperately to explain away the evidence against him. And by the time the trial was nearing its end, the judge had heard months of testimony. And when the verdict finally came, the court rejected Sandali's version of events. The evidence the judge ruled pointed to one conclusion: Karabo Moekoena had been murdered, and the man responsible was the person she trusted most, Sandali Manso. For Karabo's family, it was a moment they had waited more than a year to hear. The man responsible for taking their daughter, sister, and friend from them had been found guilty. Justice had been delivered. But justice and healing are not the same thing. No prison sentence could restore the future Karabo was meant to have. Today, Karabo Moekoena's name is remembered across South Africa not because of how she died, but because of the conversation her death started. Karabo's name is known not only in South Africa but the entire world. Her story forced the nation to confront difficult questions about abusive relationships, manipulations, and violence against women. Questions that still need answers, and questions that still matter. When Karabo walked into that hotel on April 28, 2017, she wasn't thinking about becoming a headline. She was simply a young woman spending time with someone she trusted, someone she never imagined would become the reason her life would end. The CCTV footage still exists today, a frozen moment in time. A young woman smiling, walking beside a man who appeared ordinary. A moment that looked completely insignificant until the world learned what happened next. Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't hide in abandoned houses, they don't lock in dark forests, and they don't wait under the bed. Sometimes they sit across from us, talk to us, laugh with us, tell us they love us, and by the time we discover who they really are, it's already too late. This was the story of Karabo Moekoena, and this is the monster under the bed.